and making use of it in a way that is pleasing to the giver. And in the case of almost everything that we have, the giver is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ingratitude results from the false notion that what you have been given is the result of your own efforts and abilities, okay, or the result of another person's favor or intercession. These thoughts and beliefs regarding God's favors on you are in fact kufr. I'm reminded, frankly, of a session I gave at one of the universities here in New Jersey. There was an adult class. I think it was an evening class on comparative religion, and I was asked, because I was with CARE New Jersey at the time, I was asked to give an introduction to Islam to this class, and I talked about this principle of that what you have, the wealth and good things in this life that you consider to be your possessions are gifts from Allah, and they're not, as many people think, the result of your cleverness or intelligence. And there was actually an attendee at this adult session. It was an elderly man, probably someone of some substantial wealth, who raised his hand and asked the question and said, "Are you saying that everything that I have is not because of my intelligence or cleverness, but it's just a gift from God?" And I said, "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying." And he's kind of went harumph, and he got up and stormed out of the room. He wouldn't accept that. He was obviously very proud of what he had accomplished, what he thought he had accomplished, and the things that he possessed, and thinking that this is because he was so clever and intelligent, and his possessions were in fact evidence of his cleverness of intelligence. And that's one of the diseases of this society, is we have billionaires hoarding their assets and trying to have their taxes reduced because the amount of things that they possess is what they consider to be the measure of their cleverness and their intelligence, which really results in some injustices in society. So that's another form of kufr. So we need to be grateful to Allah for everything that comes our way that benefits us, and never forget that Allah is the provider and the benefactor of all of us in all things. So now let's move on to the next ayah, where we are told, this would be now ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah 162. It says that after talking about these disbelievers, that they will be in hell forever. Okay. So on the surface, and first of all, let me ask, are there any questions about this definition, these 6 definitions of disbelievers, or anything about, disbelief? Not that I'm an expert and can answer any question, but does anyone have any questions or comments even? Okay. So let me just click on this. Okay. So on the surface, okay, so it says that they will be in hell forever. And that's, of course, an English translation. On the surface, these words seem simple enough and very straightforward, but I'll suggest that it's almost impossible for us, those of us living in this life, to fully comprehend what is meant by forever. Can anyone really claim to fully comprehend the concept of eternity? It's pretty much the same thing as the concept of infinity, which scientists, people that contemplate infinity, like the infinite stretches of the universe, which is basically space without end. Our human brains really can't process that. And a lot of people in advanced physics try to explain the universe and say that it must fold back on itself, because how could it just go on forever? I mean, we don't know. We just don't, have any concept of an end of space. Actually, an infinite space. There must be an end. How could it just keep going on and on forever and ever, and there'll always be more stars and galaxies forever? So the same thing with eternal time. Existing in eternal time. the lives that we live are so binded by clocks and calendars and lifespans. I'm turning 70 in a matter of weeks. And I'm very well aware of the limits of the lifespan of a human being. And we all are. We all know exactly, of course, how old we are, and we're thinking about where we are in the cycle of life, and where am I with my career? What kind of education should I have by now? Should I be married? Should I have kids? Am I late with any of these things? And how much time do I have left? And and of course, you look at your parents and grandparents. How much time do they have left? But I mean, everything you do is bounded by clocks and calendars, and in any situation, there is always the question: how much time do you have left? And that's in the case of this webinar, it's bounded by 1 hour. And I don't think I'm going to take the whole hour, as a matter of fact, but it's a 1 hour session. So inshallah, I'll look at the clock and say, how much time do we have left? And then after this, whatever you do, there will be a question: how much time do I have left? Whatever you do will not be something that you can do forever. So everything has deadlines, and in every situation you're capable of running out of time. So can you truly imagine an existence where the question, how much time do we have left, is entirely irrelevant, because the time is now infinite? I just want to, put that out there and see if you could try to imagine. Now let me jump to a topic that I brought up in the last session that I was part of, and that is a gospel, a scripture called the Gospel of Barnabas. And I'm pretty sure that some of the people on this session were not a part of that session, so I'll have to give some background. The New Testament is essentially the testament of Jesus' ministry, here on earth. And it begins with 4 gospels. These are 4 different tellings of his ministry. They're in sort of story form. He did this, then he did that. He said this, they did that. And they're the gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Many, if not most, Christians assume that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were witnesses to Jesus' ministry. And in fact, they assume that they are 4 of the 12 disciples that followed Jesus. In fact, that's not true. If you look at the lists of the names of disciples in the Gospels, Mark and Luke don't even exist in those lists. And Matthew and John, those names are there, but a lot of scholars don't believe that the Gospels of Matthew and John are actually the same Matthew and John that were actually disciples of Jesus. That said, there is a companion of Jesus who's given by name in the New Testament, named Barnabas. Today, he's referred to as Saint Barnabas. There's a hospital in New Jersey called the Saint Barnabas Medical Center. His name shows up in various places. He allegedly wrote his own account of Jesus' ministry, and we call it the Gospel of Barnabas. What we have of the Gospel of Barnabas cannot be authenticated, especially to the extent that we authenticate hadith. But let's just say that the 4 Gospels that the Christians accept as gospel truth cannot be authenticated either. They're not even exactly sure who wrote them and what authority they had to write these. So it depends on what your criteria are to determine what is authentic. It should be noted that the earliest version of the Gospel of Barnabas, in terms of a scroll, was written in Spanish. Okay, I think it was discovered at a masjid in Spain. The Muslims controlled Spain for, I believe, like 700 years, and there are a lot of masajid in Spain. And there was a lot of things that are written in Spanish that are very pertinent to Islam. I should note that scroll, I believe, was carbon dated, and it dated back to a time that was after the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So the Christians are aware of the Gospel of Barnabas. There was a copy of it that sits in the Vatican Library, and their official position is that it's a forgery, it's fraud, it's something that was invented by Muslims to essentially explain their version, the Muslim version of Jesus' life and ministry. And in fact, if you read the Gospel of Barnabas, it fully well tracks with the Muslim version of Prophet Isa. So it starts out by saying that Paul, who was a companion for a short time of Barnabas, is going around and saying that Jesus is the Son of God, and that by saying this, Paul's in fact leading all these people astray. Now, if you look at the New Testament, after the four Gospels, the next book in the New Testament is called Acts, and it refers to the acts of the disciples. And in it, it does say that Paul, who was not a disciple, as a matter of fact, he was an anti-Christian for a while, but then he had a vision and by the way, we know that he never did meet Jesus. He had a vision on the road to Damascus where he was actually going to make trouble for Christians, but he had a vision. He said he saw Jesus, and now he believes. So Barnabas saw him preach and thought that he was legitimate, and introduced him to the other 12 disciples, who were all talking about, what do we do now that Jesus has left this life? Because this was all post-crucifixion. And it was agreed that Barnabas and Paul should go out and preach. And then in the book of Acts, it does say that at some point, Barnabas and Paul split up. They had some kind of a disagreement, and they went in different directions. That's all it pretty much says in the book of Acts. According to Barnabas, in the Gospel of Barnabas, he split up with Paul because Paul was teaching this misguidance that Jesus was in fact Son of God, divine himself, and should be worshipped that way. And so again, Barnabas is saying that Paul is leading everyone astray, and that he shouldn't be believed, and that Barnabas is writing this book to set the record straight so people know the true story of Jesus' ministry.